Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's we're going to be doing some off-road tests with the Ineos Grenadier to see if this is actually capable from the factory. Let's get right into it. So some quick notes with the Ineos Grenadier. The tires that I have on my Grenadier give me about 11 inches of ground clearance, solid axles front and rear, 3 locking differentials, but it doesn't have a fancy modern traction control system like other cars, so it relies more on the mechanical side of things. It'll be interesting to see how it performs with stuff like this that modern traction control systems definitely do better, but we'll see. So triple locked, and I have a pretty good idea of how the Grenadier performs now. So we're not going to be playing any games where I, do the no differentials locked and then try to get up something with one differential locked. And I know that people might like that for YouTube content, but the thing that I've learned about the Grenadier as an owner is you just lock the differentials. You don't have them locked 100% of the time, but you're going to have them locked a lot more often than other modern vehicles, because again, this relies on mechanical grip. And I will say that hill was easier than I expected it to be, but again, once you triple lock this car, it is pretty much unstoppable. But if you have it unlocked, well, pretty much everything can stop it. Now again, I've seen TFL complain about this, and I'm not calling them out like in a negative way. I think they just didn't have enough time with their Grenadier. Now you can see these are beeping, and you can see that we still have solid lights here. So a lot of people assume that that means that the differentials are still locked. That is not the case. They are unlocked at this point. You can feel it in the steering. And so even if, yeah, you can see the front diff is off now, is what it shows. So even if this doesn't indicate that the differentials are unlocked, when you press the buttons, they're unlocked. The computer's just doing checks to ensure that it is fully unlocked before it gives you the go-ahead. So yeah, just something to note. But with the tires there down, you guys can see them around 20 PSI, tons of mechanical grip, and that's what you have to understand about the Grenadier is it is all about mechanical grip. And so that's why you want to use the diff locks, and that's why you want to make sure you've got good tires. I mean, good tires are important with every single off-roader, but I would say they are especially, there you can see it's now shows the rear diffs unlocked, and again, it was unlocked the whole time, but now it's just fully indicating I've taken enough turns. But yeah, that it's important for every single off-roader, but especially for this. It doesn't have fancy computer wizardry like the Toyotas and the Land Rovers and everything to be able to perfectly distribute torque. It's like, lock the diffs. If you want control, lock the diffs. If you want a good, turning radius, you want to be able to drive a little bit faster, unlock the diffs, like what I have now. And I really like that about the Grenadier with the driving experience. Oh man, this has gotten dug out. That's cool to see. And this actually articulates really well. And that's something else to note about the Grenadier, is the solid axle setup is to give you even more mechanical grip. Now it is important to note this doesn't have any sort of sway bar disconnects. It is completely fixed with that, just like a G-Wagon. And so you are going to be relying on those lockers more so because of that as well. You're going to pick up tires a little bit sooner than something like a Wrangler, for example, that's got quite a bit more articulation, but this still articulates well enough in most circumstances that it is not a problem. Now this is what I would call just kind of like a dirt road. It does have some pretty rutted out sections, I mean, again, the camera's going to flatten everything out, you just have to understand that, but right here, decently rutted out. So this is, I feel like pretty, the back end bounced up a little bit because it's gone too fast. Anyways, this is pretty indicative of a lot of roads that people will take for long miles off-road, right? It's like the super technical stuff is typically just a very small part of a trail. This really articulates. You can see I got off camber quite a bit there. And you can really hear the suspension working there. But yeah, I just have the center diff locked going downhill, right? If I was going up that, I might want to have at least the rear differential locked just to be able to get traction up that. But these shocks are actually really solid. So they're Bilstein shocks. And what I've learned about Bilstein shocks that are not active, like what you have on the Ram TRX, for example, or the position sensitive shocks on like the Bronco, which aren't an active system, but still position sensitive, regardless, Bilstein shocks don't really add all that much comfort off-road. You're still gonna feel quite a bit. Now they, you know, once you get into the shock more compressed, it does absorb things, but what they do really well is they give you control. So what it does is it kind of firms up the ride, I'd say a little bit more than what you feel in a vehicle that doesn't have Bilstein shocks. And so when you're going through this stuff, I feel like I have a lot of control. And so I think it makes sense as to why Ineos use those shocks for this. From that perspective, then also Bilstein shocks are super durable. You can get so many miles out of them. I mean, there are people that they don't do any off-roading, they just do street driving, and they'll have a set of Bilstein shocks and they'll put hundreds of thousands of miles on them. So they're great shocks for durability. So that is a huge plus, if I remember right. So let's go down here. But yeah, you can see, I mean, the vehicle doesn't have the Raptors, like the vehicle's gonna move around a bit, but the most important thing is I am constantly in control. Now, I've seen quite a few Grenadier videos, and I feel like people don't show a lot of this side of the Grenadier, which is just how well it cuts through trails. Again, low range with this. It doesn't try to go super high up in the RPMs like a lot of other cars with this programming. Saves you on fuel, but it also makes it so that it's very smooth going through things. And again, the suspension also helps out with that quite a bit. And I can really tell that the Grenadier is tuned towards overlanding, because the way that it just, like I said, cuts through these trails, the speed at which I can go through, the maneuverability. And again, people complain about the steering, but you guys can see I'm able to be really precise with this and just go through this stuff. It's a little bit of work, but I'm not getting any kickback through the steering like in most cars. So I'm able to just cruise. I mean, this is fun. This is really fun. And the size helps out too with this vehicle. I'm not having to worry too much about the trees. But I figured I'd show a quick clip of this just so you guys can see. And here, this is like a somewhat tight section. Yeah, I figured I'd show this to you because this is a big thing that this is a thing rather that the Grenadier does really well, is just how it traverses trails like this that aren't necessarily all that difficult, right? But they're a big part of off-roading. Now this is gonna be the last clip that's just POV. The rest of the video, I'm gonna have some exterior shots as well. I know people appreciate those. But this is a hill climb that I really like doing. It's a decent increase in elevation, decently rugged. The Grenadier just eats it up. Now I'm actually gonna do the diff locks. Check lock conditions. Oh, I need to be stopped, I forgot. You know what? I don't get paid to be smart. Anyways, see, instantly locked. Steering is not going to be, like, that's all I have. I can't turn past, so a little bit less turning radius. But climbing up something like this that's steep and loose, it helps out. And the gearing's really good on this. It's not quite as low as a Wrangler, but again, the benefit of that is you can cruise through the trails a lot quicker than a Wrangler. It's like the crawling stuff, the Wrangler is going to do a little bit better, but this is going to cruise through those trails a little bit better. Now this does have hill descent control. I'll be honest, I just don't care to use it. Maybe I'll use it at one point. I just use the transmission because, again, the gearing's low enough in this. I just use the transmission to modulate. So right now I'm in first gear, for example, and this is more than slow enough. And if I need to slow down a little bit more, I just kind of modulate the brake. Again, if you've driven in the snow, if you've driven off-road quite a bit, then you kind of understand how to modulate the brake pedal down something that's steep and potentially slick. And so the hill descent control, I still think it's a nice feature. If something gets really hairy, right, let the computers kind of do the work for you. But in stuff where you've got some level of confidence, it's easier, in my opinion, just to do it manually. And I think it adds to the experience, right, where you're kind of, you know, pressing the buttons up top and you're doing the shift and everything. It's kind of like you're driving in an airplane in a way. It's fun. So I said that I wasn't going to do unlocked diff stuff, but this obstacle is actually a really good way to show this, and it's easy to get down. If Hey, don't get up. So this is completely unlocked. I shouldn't say completely unlocked. I've got the center diff locked. So you can see it goes up just fine for the most part. I do kind of have to work at it a little bit to get the grip, but overall it's not bad. Time we're gonna do the diffs locked. Gonna try to take pretty much the same line. I don't know if it's gonna show up on camera too well, but what I'm feeling as the driver is it's a little bit smoother on, especially in that transition right there. Just a little bit smoother with those differentials. So this actually articulates way better than I originally thought. This is pretty much all the way flexed out. I am still touching the ground here in the rear, but it's actually way better than I expected. You can see we're super tucked here on the side. The front doesn't articulate nearly as much as the rear, but it still is pretty darn solid. Like this level of contact is more than enough for most people. Sorry about the camera being shaky, it's cold. So I know that the dash indicates that my rear diff is locked. It is actually unlocked. Now the reason I'm bringing that up is, sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath, I'm just running all over the place. I want to do this initially with the diffs unlocked. And by the way, this shows how good the angles are on the Grenadier. You can take things at a pretty aggressive line with this and still clear it. So here is the part where I might get hung up. We'll see if the Grenadier can figure it out with the diffs unlocked. Oh, well, this is what I'm talking about, mechanical grip. I was really hoping, because I've had other vehicles, I've been able to get them stuck here. But yeah, the Grenadier, it has so much mechanical grip that it's able to work through some of that stuff. If it was a little bit muddier, like it is during the spring, I might have been able to get the Grenadier to be stuck, but, well, we tried. This is going to be the last obstacle, and super impressed with the Grenadier after taking it out here. I think this might be the best desert traversing vehicle out there, right next to the Land Cruiser. So we've got some rock shelves here. They're not too insane. We're not going to go down the center one because I don't know if I have the clearances, and I don't want to rip up the bottom. I'd rather do that with a spotter, but just makes mincemeat out of everything. And that's the thing to understand about the Grenadier, is it's one of those vehicles that once you use it properly, it makes off-roading boring, which I think is a huge plus, because then that means you can focus on, wait for it, stuff like this. Look, I mean, look how beautiful that view is. You got the snow-capped mountains in the background. You've got the grasslands, the, you know, arid grass. I don't know, it's just a beautiful contrast. But this allows you to get to places like this very, very easily with the capability. And so, yeah, to just cap it off, amazingly capable. And I know if people are gonna ask about the check engine light, it just needs a software update, that's all. So don't worry about that. I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the video. But super capable vehicle off-road. You just have to be willing to use the differentials all the time and just get used to the lights blinking. Again, it takes a second for the system to really say that, hey, it's off, but it turns off instantly. And so I'm really impressed. I think that this is basically, if I were to sum it up off-road, it's kind of like you took a G-Wagon and a Land Cruiser and then put them into one vehicle, and that's kind of what the Grenadier feels like off-road. Or another comparison could be like you took a Land Cruiser, or not a Land Cruiser, a Toyota 4Runner and a Wrangler, and then took like the Land Cruiser build quality. But anyways, Toyota 4Runner plus Wrangler, one vehicle, and then Land Cruiser build quality, and that's another way you can kind of look at how the Grenadier feels and how it off-roads. It's seriously impressive.